Good morning, and welcome to our third lesson in our study of the Book of Esther. As I've said before, although God is not mentioned in this book, and although prayer is not mentioned, as we go through this, you can see how God seems to be working behind the scenes to have His ways accomplished, even through non-believers and through pagans. So, in the first two chapters, we've seen how the king Ahasuerus deposed his queen, Queen Vashti, and how he then came to have Esther become his queen, even through a way which normally would not have been the case in those days. So now as we enter chapter 3 of this book of intrigue and mystery, we need the person who is always present in a book of intrigue, the villain. And this is Haman. Haman enters this book in the first of chapter 3 in these words: "After these things, King Ahasuerus promoted Haman, the son of Hammedatha the Agagite, and advanced him and set his seat above all the princes who were with him." So this man was a part of King Ahasuerus' court, and now he was promoted to be the chief of all the ministers, probably the prime minister of the country. Now, in order to understand how this is important, we have to look at his pedigree, because it says here he was an Agagite. Now, in order to get the picture of this, or the history of this, we have to go back to the book of Exodus and also the book of 1 Samuel. It says in Exodus chapter 17, the last part of chapter 17, it says, "Then the Lord said to Moses, write this for a memorial in the book and recount it in the hearing of Joshua, that I will utterly blot out the remembrance of Amalek from under heaven." And Moses built an altar and called its name, "The Lord is my banner," for he said, "Because the Lord has sworn, the Lord will have war with Amalek from generation to generation." Keep that in mind. Because what he's saying is he wants nothing to do with Amalek or the Amaleks, the Amalek people. So now, if you have the Bible, go over to 1 Samuel chapter 15. It talks about Samuel and Saul's war with the Amalekites, and how God told Saul to punish Amalek for what he did to Israel, how he ambushed him all the way when he came up from Egypt. Now go and attack Amalek and utterly destroy all that they have, and do not spare them, but kill both man and woman, infant and nursing child, ox and sheep, camel and donkey. So Saul was given this order to completely wipe out the Amalekites. However, if you go down further in the chapter, you will see that Saul attacked the Amalekites. He took Agag, king of the Amalekites, alive and destroyed the other people. But he also spared Agag and the best of the sheep, the oxen, the fatlings, the lambs, and all that was good. And he was unwilling to utterly destroy them. Now Samuel came against Saul for this, and asked why he had disobeyed God, and ended up killing Agag himself, the king of the Amalekites. So, this is the basis of the story, where God has said the Amalekites and Amalek would be at war with God from generation to generation. Now this is important, because don't forget we're talking about the Israelites and Amalek, and now we're in Persia, which is present-day Iran. So you see there's a connection even today between Iran and Israel through this system. So this was Haman. He was of the Agagites. He was from King Agag of the Amalekites. And it says He was promoted above all of the king's servants, of the king's princes, and all the king's servants who were within the king's gate bowed and paid homage to Haman, for so the king had commanded concerning him. But Mordecai would not bow down or pay homage. So king had ordered that people would pay reverence, homage to Haman, and everyone did. And Haman apparently required this. He was a very egotistical type person, perhaps not very confident, but he needed this adulation. He needed this knowledge that people were paying attention to him. And people did, except for Mordecai. Mordecai would not bow down. Now perhaps this was because he figured that he should not bow down because of his religion. He should not bow down to anyone except God. Or perhaps he didn't feel Haman was worthy of being given the honor and homage that he requested. In any way, Mordecai would not bow down or pay homage. Then the king's servants who were within the king's gate said to Mordecai, "Why do you transgress the king's command?" Now it happened, when they spoke to him daily and he would not listen to them, that they told it to Haman. So the people who wanted Mordecai to pay homage to Haman, to keep peace in the court, so to speak, after Mordecai would not listen to them, they went and told Haman. And Haman told him to see whether Mordecai's words would stand. For Mordecai had told him that he was a Jew. Now whether Haman knew this beforehand or not, we don't know. Whether the king knew it or not beforehand, we don't know. Or whether the king even knew it now, we don't know. But Mordecai told other people that he was a Jew and would not bow down to Haman. And the other persons in the court told this to Haman. Now Haman's background was that of the Amalekites. And God has said there would be war with the Amalekites, between Israel and the Amalekites, from generation to generation. So Haman hated the Jews. And if Saul had carried out God's command at the first, then Haman would not be present, because the Amalekites would have been wiped out. But Saul did not obey God, and therefore this lineage and the Amalekites survived, even down through that day, and perhaps even in a sense to today. So it happened, when Mordecai would not bow down, and he continued to stand on that, he continued to stand in his word, Haman saw them that he was a Jew. When Haman saw that Mordecai did not bow down or pay him homage, he was absolutely annoyed. He was filled with wrath. He was beside himself because Mordecai was refusing to pay him the homage that he felt he was due. So we have this scenario of this person who was put in a prime position in King Ahasuerus' court, who hated the Jews, and found out that a Jew would not bow down and pay him homage, and this would just send him over the edge. But he disdained to lay hands on Mordecai alone, for they had told him of the people of Mordecai. So Haman conjured up a plot. He wanted to get rid of Mordecai, but he also hated all the Jews because of his background. So he decided to make a plot. As some would say, the plot thickens. He sought to destroy all the Jews who were throughout the whole kingdom of Ahasuerus, the people of Mordecai. So he made a plan to exterminate all the Jews. Now, if you consider this in the context of our modern history, this is the first plan to exterminate the Jews as a people. People have sought to make them less significant and to limit their numbers, as the pharaohs did in Egypt. But this was the first plot to exterminate the Jews. But it was not the last in history, because Hitler tried to do the same thing in World War II. So he made this plot. He wanted to get rid of all the Jews. He wanted to get rid of everyone that was of Jewish descent. So this is what he did. In the first month, which is the month of Nisan, in the 12th year of King Ahasuerus' reign, they cast pur, that is, the lot. Now, pur, or the lot, were something like dice. They were numbered or colored or somehow stones or wood of different configurations that people would put into an area. They cast lots so that the number of these stones, which are similar or significant, would then tell them supposedly the best time to do things. Now, in the first month of the Persian calendar, it was felt that the gods of Persia came together to determine the fate of the people for that future year. And this was the auspicious time to cast these lots, to try to determine the best time to carry out Haman's plan. They were appealing to the gods of Persia to give them the most auspicious time to do his dirty deeds. So, they cast lots. Now, it also says in Psalm 16:33 that the lot is cast into the lap, but its every decision is from the Lord. Keep that in mind, because as you see, the lots were cast on the first month of the Persian calendar, which is about our April. King Ahasuerus was not really aware of what was being all done, except that Haman wanted to exterminate the Jews. Ahasuerus' queen, Esther, was a Jewess. He apparently did not know this. And so Haman was now casting these ballots in front of the Persian gods to determine which was the most auspicious time to carry out his dastardly plan. And it says that they cast pur, the lot, before Haman to determine the day and the month, and it fell on the 12th month, which is the month of Adar. So we are in the first month, and the lot cast on the 12th month, which gives 11 months before the plan then could be done. So there was 12 months for the Jews to be aware of what was going on before something would happen. It was also noted this in the 12th year of Ahasuerus' reign, so Esther was now his queen for about 7 years. So Haman said then to King Ahasuerus, "There is a certain people scattered and dispersed among the people in all the provinces of your kingdom. Their laws are different from all the other peoples, and they do not keep the king's laws. Therefore it is not fitting for the king to let them remain." So what Haman is trying to say is because these people had their own customs, their own conventions, and followed their own regulations and rules, that really King Ahasuerus should not let them remain in his kingdom. He is setting them up as the fact that because they were a little different, they were therefore a danger to him. And this is really the basis of prejudice. This is where prejudicial thinking comes in, because people are a little different, or act a little different, or do things a little differently. Then we often look at them in a different way, as if there's some kind of danger to us or to the other people that are prejudiced against them. This is the basis of prejudice. And this is where this comes from. Their laws are different from all other people's, and they do not keep the king's laws. Therefore it is not fitting for the king to let them remain. If it pleases the king, let a decree be written that they be destroyed. Now this was the basis of Hitler's problem with the Jews, because he felt that they were manipulating the economy and dangers to the to the German people, and he devised a way to have them destroyed. We all know what happened during World War II. This, in contrast, is the first part, the first attempt to eliminate the Jewish race. Let it please the king that a decree be written that they be destroyed, and I will pay 10,000 talents of silver into the hands of those who do the work, to bring it into the king's treasuries. So what this is really meaning is that Haman was willing to give, to devise, to develop or obtain 10,000 talents of silver, which would end up in the king's treasuries, although he would give it initially to those doing the work that he wanted done. The 10,000 talents of silver is a lot of money, about $20 million in today's money, and that was a lot of money back there. It was felt, Herodotus, the historian of that time, says that the king of Persia's income for the year was about 15,000 talents. So this was about 2/3 of the entire year's income for the king. Not a small number by any means, and it was not uncommon for people in those days to bribe the king with large sums of money. There are other reports in Barnes' Note of people doing this with gold and bringing it to bribe or to give to the king Xerxes or to king Ahasuerus, which he's also known by. So I will pay 10,000 talents of silver into the hands of those who do the work, and to bring it into the king's treasury. So the king took his signet ring from his hand and gave it to Haman, the son of Hammedatha the Agagite, the enemy of the Jews. So now Haman had the signet ring, the ring by which the king affixed his seal to documents to make them official. Haman now had the official ring of the king and had all the authority and all the power that he needed. And the king said to Haman, the money and the people are given to you to do with them as seems good to you. Now you notice the king never investigated Haman's claim at all. He just went ahead with whatever his prime minister said. He just followed, maybe because he trusted him, maybe because he didn't want to bother looking into it, and maybe because he was too influenced by the 10,000 talents of silver. In any case, he went along with Haman's plan, carte blanche, no investigation, no looking into it at all to see how justified it might have been. Then the king's scribes were called on the 13th day of the first month. So this was not long getting started. This was still in the first month of the Persian calendar. And a decree was written according to all that Haman commanded, to the king's satraps, to the governors who were over each province, to the officials of all people, to every province according to its script, and in every people in their language. Now, this was not a small job. This was not a small exploit. The king of Persia, Ahasuerus, was over about 127 different provinces. This was the largest empire in the world at the time. And it was felt that there were probably about 127 different languages throughout the empire. And what you have is this commandment going out in the language of the people, to every people in their language. So all the translations, all the scribing would have to be done, and this would take some effort, take some time, and some resources to get this accomplished. But it was done. And in the name of King Ahasuerus it was written and sealed with the king's signet ring. And the letters were sent by couriers into all the king's provinces to destroy, to kill, and to annihilate all the Jews, both young and old, little children and women, in one day on the 13th day of the 12th month, which is in the month of Adar. So this commandment went out to do all this dastardly deed for one day in the month of Adar, which again is about 11 months hence from the time the commandment goes out. So you have to look at the Persian Empire. It was a very efficient empire at the time. And it went out by couriers to all the far reaches of the realms. It is estimated that this was the type of pony express which was unexcelled in those days. It would take about 2 to 3 weeks to go from the capital, Susan, to the far reaches of the empire by courier, by horses, by runners. It would probably take 2 to 3 months to do this on foot or by the normal traveler getting there. But this was something that was very efficiently done in those days, probably more efficient than any other country on earth at the time. So it would take about 2 or 3 weeks. So before the end of the first month, this commandment would be in all the provinces and to all the people in their own languages. And a copy of the document was sent to be issued as law in every province, being published for all people, that they should be ready for that day. The couriers went out, hastened by the king's command, and the decree was proclaimed in Shushan, the capital. So the king and Haman sat down to drink, but the city of Shushan was perplexed. So this probably was similar to what would have happened during the so-called Jewish question during World War II. The order went out to all the people. The order was complete. People who have examined this document today said it was a very legal and complete document. There was no question. Everybody was to be affected. Everybody was to be taken. This was an equivalent of what God had said to Saul to do to the Amalekites. Saul did not do it. But now Haman had his chance to do just the reverse, to do it to the Jews. And he was determined to have this carried out. So this law was complete. And it went as a commandment from the king under his signet ring to the governors of all the provinces to do this deed in the month of Adar, which is 11 months hence. And what happened? The king and Haman just sat down and had a cozy drink. They were quite happy with themselves. King Ahasuerus probably did not yet realize what he had done. Haman was feeling very, very self-satisfied that he had got his plan carried out under the king's order, and it had just now waiting to be completed. However, the citizens of Shushan were perplexed because they knew many of these people. They had lived with them, they had worked with them. Many Jews at that time had offices, were part of the economy, were part of the whole process of the Persian Empire, just as Jews were in France and in Germany during the first start of the Second World War. And the local people were perplexed. Why was this being done? Why was this being carried out? Why was this commandment made? So this was the plot of Haman, the villain in this story, to get his way, to get his revenge on the Jewish people through Mordecai, through his hatred of Mordecai, and through his ancestry of the Amalekites. This was the way that this was going to work according to his thoughts and his processes. And now the scene is set for God to intervene in a different way. And that we'll see starting next week in the 4th chapter of the Book of Esther. That's enough for today. Thanks for joining me. Hope we'll see you next week. Bye for now.